All right, so tonight's title is, or good evening. Tonight's title is Setting the Christian Standard. 晚上好，今天的主题是制定基督教的标准。And so this is what us Christians should strive for. This is what we should be trying to accomplish every day of our life, and especially as we're getting ready to go into a new year, what kind of goals that we should personally set for our Christian lives. 然后呢，今天晚上的主题是我们基督徒的生活，你可以了解，这样子我们要，成为更厉害的、更好的、更长久的基督徒，那怎么做呢？然后我们的基督徒的生活应该是怎么样的？特别是明年我们有什么目标，如果我们想成为更厉害的、更好的、更长久的基督徒，那怎么做呢？然后我们的基督徒的生活应该是怎么样的？ setting just a standard for yourself, 就是你自己指定的标准，and that is things that you want to do, you want to improve on, and things that you don't want to necessarily go back on. 然后呢，就是你自己的基督徒的生活的要求，然后呢，就是这个地方你想自己进步，而且不想退步。And we know that the Christian life is one that is constantly where we are going back and forth, and we always want to be improving. 然后我们知道我们基督徒的生活是有时候是进步，但是有时候是退步。Like the other day when I was talking with Jason on Sunday night, Jason and Annie, and they were talking just about sin in their life, and they were asking, why is Christian life like this? And that's actually all Christians are this way. Even Paul the Apostle talks about that. 然后呢，星期天晚上 Jason 还有 Annie 他们在问我这个问题，就是我们基督徒的生活犯罪，为什么还有犯罪？那如果你犯罪的话，还是基督徒吗？然后我说保罗他已经讨论这个问题，他也说了他平常遇到这个问题。And so these are standards that we should have for our lives, especially for next year. 然后就是我们对自己的我们要指定一个基督徒的标准. And so let's look at this, because these are things that all of us can improve on, especially as we're going into next year. How can you, as a Christian, improve in your life? 所以特别是因为这是年快结束了，那明年你自己的基督徒的生活，你哪里可以进步？ Look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 5. 帖撒罗尼迦前书第2章第5节. For neither at any time used we flattering words, as ye know, nor a cloak of covetousness. God is witness. 因为我们从来没有用过谄媚的话，这是你们知道的，也没有藏着甜心，这是神可以做真正的。Nor of men sought we glory, neither of you, nor yet of others, when we might have been burdensome as the apostles of Christ. 我们做基督徒的使徒，虽然可以叫人尊重，却没有向你们或伤别人求荣耀。But we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children. 只在你们中间存心温柔，如同母亲乳养自己的孩子。So being affectionately desirous of you, we were willing to have imparted unto you not the gospel of God, but also of our souls, because ye were dear unto us. 我们既是这样爱你们，不但愿意彰神的福音给你们，连自己的性命也愿意给你们，因你们是我们所疼爱的。So if we're looking at these few verses that I just read off, Paul talks about in these few verses multiple characteristics of him and Timotheus Timothy and Timotheus. No, who's the other person? Sorry. I forgot the other guy's name. The three guys are there. He lists off characteristics of their Christian attributes. 然后保罗在这里他刚刚分享这五个经文，刚刚分享他还有他的两个弟兄们他们的态度，他们对这个教会是怎么样的。And so what I want us to look at today is this passage of scripture, but specifically how they treated this church. 然后今天晚上我们要好好学习什么？保罗、提摩太还有希拉，他们对这个教会是怎么样的？ Sheila in English is what? That's Sheila, but English. 英文翻过来. I forgot his English name, but his Chinese name is Sheila. Anyways, these three brothers, how they responded to the church. They could have did something. They could have been this way, but instead they were this way. They treated the church this way. 然后这三个弟兄，提摩太、保罗还有希拉，他们对这个教会是怎么样的？而且他们的态度是怎么样的？因为他们应该可以对他们比较严格、比较凶什么的，但是他们不是，他们表达更多的忍耐，还有更多的爱。Let's look at these. So these are things that we're pulling 7 different virtues of a Christian pulled just from these few verses, just from how Paul, Timothy, and Sheila, I forgot his English name, how they responded to this church. And these are things that we can look at and how we can learn, how we can set up our Christian lives, areas that we can improve on. 然后我们要看看这三个弟兄他们对这个教会怎么样的，而且我们可以学习什么，特别是为了明年我们的可以做一个自己的基督徒的目标。So 7 virtues of a Christian. 所以基督徒的7大美德。The first one is honesty. 第一个是诚实的。So Paul, I've mentioned this before, Paul is a church planter. 所以我知道我已经跟你们说了，保罗是一个开教会，就是他的工作开教会，建立教会。And so when you are a church planter, what does that look like? 所以你在开教会，就是如果就是你的工作，或者你在建立教会，这个工作是怎么样的？ What he would do is he would go to his city. He would go there, he'd start preaching the gospel. When people get converted, he'd find other Christians there, or people would get converted, or both together, and then they would join him, and eventually he would establish a church. 所以他去新的城市，他做什么？他开始传福音。如果他找到别的基督徒，或者别人成为基督徒，他们会跟着他，跟他在一起，然后他会开教会。And so when he first started the church, most likely there was not a whole lot of people. It might have just been a few people. And we know in the book of Acts that some of these churches, they started off in the homes kind of like this. And it might have only been a few people, might not have been that many. But as the church would grow, he would stay in a city sometimes for a few years until the church was well established, and then he would move on. 所以保罗做什么？特别是在使徒行传，他们在别人的家庭见面，在家里做礼拜，不是在外面。他们平常在这样的房子开始教会，然后保罗教到几个人，他们会一起开始聚会。然后呢，如果人比较多的话，他会留在这个城市可能1、2、3年。然后呢，他们找到另外一个牧师，他会去别的城市。And so we call this a church planter. So Paul traveled to many different areas. Some places he was there for a very long time, a few years, and some rather shorter. And he had goals in mind. 所以保罗他去了很多城市，有的时候是比较长的时间，可能几年，但是别的城市可能是不是那么长。然后他有自己的目标，他要做什么。And so here he is helping to establish his church here, and he's teaching them characteristics. And one of the things that he could have done as a church planter is he could have, every church he went to, he could have collected money and say, hey, I'm a church planter, I need to raise a lot of support. I need to get money so I can go to this new city and start a church. 然后保罗因为他的工作是开教会，他可以去很多教会说，嘿，我要去新的城市开教会，我需要你帮助我，我需要你们给我帮助，给我很多钱，可以去哪个城市开教会。But what did he do? 但是他做什么 He didn't do that. 但是他没有做这句话。And so Paul, as he was traveling, sometimes people would get very upset at him. People would spread rumors. They talk bad about him. They would talk behind his back. They would say he's, stealing money, or he's teaching false doctrine, or he's not a real apostle. And so Paul had many enemies. But one thing he didn't do is he never lied to other people to gain an advantage or to make money. He never did any of that. So 保罗其实他有很多仇敌，很多敌人，他们平常来骂他，或者说保罗是不好的，或者他不是使徒，或者他是做这个工作是为了赚钱而已。但是保罗什么？他是从第一天他到他离开，他都是诚实的基督徒。所以这个 the first virtue is honesty。所以第一个美的是什么？诚实的。Christians don't continually throw around words of flattery. So one of the things Paul could have done, Paul could have boasted. And not only that, whenever he went to new cities to get people to come to Christ, he could have used words of flattery. But you never see him doing that. 但是你知道吗？保罗他可以去行的诚实，也成为比较骄傲的。然后说很多我们说 like sweet words， 就是 like 甜话，就是 like 反常的话。为了什么？为了让别人感觉很舒服的，然后他们可能成为基督徒。但是保罗从来没有做这样的。And Paul never went to a city where there were Christians and used flattering words to get their approval, to raise money, to raise support, or whatever, or for his own goal. He never ever did that. He was always honest. 然后保罗就比如如果他去新的城市找到别的基督徒，他从来没有对他们反常的话，他就是跟他们说实话，他是很诚实的基督徒。It says, verse 5, 第5节, for neither at any time used we, that's Paul, Timothy, and Sila, used flattering words as you know. So he's saying here, he goes, hey, we came here, we didn't come here and say, wow, what a great church, wow, you guys have so much money, and what a great speaker, what a great congregation you guys have, what great prayer, and saying all these good things to get their approval. Why? So that they could make money, or so that they could get fame or make a lot of friends and then move on. So to their advantage, they never did that. He's saying none of us did that. None of us did that because there were rumors going around about Paul and the company that he held, and saying he's only doing this for his own advantage. And Paul's saying we never did any of that. 然后保罗他可能去这个教会说，哇，你的牧师真的真不错，或者你们唱歌是非常好听，或者你们的祷告是这么厉害。为了什么？为了他们以后的目标，或者为了他们以后的发展，或者为了他们以后的想法。但是他们做什么？他们老是对他们是诚实的。He told them， 然后他告诉他们真理是什么。And he would always, and not just himself, but the people that he was with. 然后不是只有他自己，也是跟他的弟兄们跟他们一样的。He's saying we could have used flattering words, but we didn't. 然后他说我们可能说什么谄媚的话，但是我们没有。And so us as Christians, this is something that we should strive for, especially next year, is to not be Christians that only say flattering words. We speak the truth because sometimes flattering words could actually cause a lot of damage. 然后我们特别是明年，我们的目标应该是什么？我们都是诚实的基督徒，不要说很多谄媚的话，因为谄媚的话也可能是什么？真的骗别人。For example, if someone has really bad health, and so for instance, like in America, there is like a lot of people know that a lot of Americans are overweight. 很多人知道在美国，很多美国人比较胖。And so right now there is a lot of women, if they're overweight, they will have certain words that they use to describe themselves and say that it's not that big of a deal. You're very, very obese. It's not that big of a problem. They'll say, well, it's just this or it's that. Or they'll say it's like extra beauty, and they'll promote it in magazines. But there's a danger to that. Why? Because it's actually very unhealthy. it can actually cause them to have heart problems later on. But if you're always promoting this kind of stuff and you're always saying all these good words that people want to hear, what's that actually doing? That's actually not covering up the issue. Because you can say, wow, you look so beautiful. The more weight you put on, it means there's more of you I can love. But at the end of the day is they still have a heart and they might have heart conditions later on because of that. 然后在美国就比如如果特别是女人如果她们比较胖的话，她们现在有很多我们说另外一个档次，另外一个手法，为了什么？为了不是批评他们，是为了鼓励他们的这么胖的生活。然后他们觉得是如果他们非常胖的话，他们说那你可以更爱我，或者那我是这么胖，那这个意思是我可以让你，我给你怎么说 ？There's more of me to love， 就是我现在是更大的，我可以给你更多的爱的意思。我不知道你明白这个意思，但是就是非常不好，为什么？对，是别人听这话，他们觉得很开心。如果他们今天觉得我是这么肥，我是这么胖。然后你说你不是那么胖，其实你是挺漂亮的。可是如果他们非常胖的话，那这个可能以后给他们的心脏有很大的问题。So that would be flattering words. 所以就是什么？就是谄媚的话。And a lot of people do this. 很多人也有每天用谄媚的话。But 谄媚的话 flattering words actually might end up hurting those people later on, if all they constantly hear is flattering words, because it's distorting the truth, it's putting something over the truth that it should be revealed. 但是你知道吗？如果我们说很多谄媚的话，这个也是有点骗他们。为什么？因为这个意思是他们不想听真理，或者他们不想知道真理是什么，所以他们想听谄媚的话。或者你不想他们很生气，所以你会说很多谄媚的话。但是这个只有帮助你很短的时间，因为真理还是真理。如果他们是非常胖的话，那他们以后可能有血的问题，或者有心脏的问题，或者别的问题。And so Paul says we didn't do this. We didn't do this when we wanted to build churches. We didn't do this when we wanted to bring people to Christ. We didn't ever use flattering words. We only spoke the truth. 然后保罗说，我们从来没有用谄媚的话。如果我们要开教会，我们没有用谄媚的话。如果我们要在传福音上领导别人成为基督徒，我们从来没有用谄媚的话。And I know now that especially, every week I get phone calls from Baidu. 就比如每周 Baidu 给我打电话。And when they do, they always either want to work with me or they want to sell something to me. 他们如果他们给我打电话是两件事，第一件事是因为他们想跟我一起合作，或者第二个是他们想卖掉东西给我。And whenever they do this, they always say a bunch of really flattering things. Like yesterday, and it's always the same thing. 然后就说昨天他们给我打电话，老师是这样的 ：You're a foreigner， 你是外国人。Wow, your Chinese is so great. Wow, 你的普通话是这么标准。And then and they always say these 3-4 same sentences every single time. 然后他们每一次给我打电话都是一样的句话。Why do you have a Chinese name? 为什么你有中文名字 ？Foreigners can have a Chinese name. 外国人可以自己开公司，这个 And it's always the same thing. They're always like, wow. And I know what that is. 我知道这是什么。It's flattery. 就是谄媚的话。Why? Because they want me to spend money. 因为他们想我花钱。So it's always, and that's what Paul's saying. Paul's saying we didn't do this. 然后保罗说我们没有做这样的话。And so as Christians, that's something we want to avoid. Now I understand that every now and then it just sometimes comes out. And sometimes we just do it because we want to be nice. I understand that. But if you're doing it every single day, that is extremely dangerous. 但是我知道有时候我们就是跟朋友讨论很多，然后可能你说一定的谄媚的话，这不是我的意思，就是没问题。可是如果你是每天说很多谄媚的话，那你要好好问自己，我的到底是什么？我的目标是什么？为什么我每天对这个人说谄媚的话？ Why am I? If you use flattering words every day, you need to ask yourself, Why? What's the reason? What are my goals? What's my intention? Am I afraid of this person? So I'm using flattering words. Am I saying flattering words to this person because I want something from them? Maybe I want money. Maybe I want a business promotion. Is that why I'm doing it? 然后如果你发现了你是基督徒，然后你说很多谄媚的话，是为什么？是因为你想更好的工作的地位吗？是因为你想他借钱给你吗？或者是什么？ Proverbs, and so whenever a person uses flattering words, and I'm not talking about every once in a while, I'm talking about often, there's always an agenda. There's always something that they want in return. 你知道吗？我的意思不是他们可能有的时候用谄媚的话，这不是我的意思。我的意思是常常的。如果人常常对你用谄媚的话，那他们有自己的日常，他们有一个目标，他们想你以后给他们什么东西，或者以后他们想你帮助他们，所以他们说很多谄媚的话。Proverbs 28:23 says， 箴言28章23节说 ，He that rebuketh a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth the tongue。慈悲人的后来蒙人喜悦，多于那用舌头谄媚人的。So here's the thing. Sometimes, I remember, was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. No, this morning. Olamide was telling me how some of his teachers don't like him. At the office, they don't like him. He goes, because I always tell him, he said he always tells them the truth. He says, you guys can't be doing this or that because it's bad. And so let's say Olamide saw his teacher doing something that was illegal. And he says, you can't do that, that's illegal. The teacher most likely is going to get angry at him and maybe say something bad or curse him or say you don't know what you're talking about or get out of here. And so in this situation, Olamide was only using the truth. And the truth did what? The truth revealed something that this person shouldn't be doing and it caused him to get angry. Or Olamide could say, what you're doing is all right. You should keep going. Maybe they're stealing some money or something like that, or they're showing favoritism to the students. And Olamide could jump on the same bandwagon and use flattering words because he knows that it'll help him in the future, even though he knows what this person is doing wrong. That's kind of like what it's saying here. It's saying the person who speaks the truth, like which Olamide did, maybe it cost him at first. Maybe it hurt him at first. But in the long run, it'll only help him. 所以就比如今天早上 Olamide 他跟我分享他的南京的大学的问题。他说你知道吗？在哪里有一些的老师们，他们都不太喜欢他，因为他说他老师说是真理的，因为他说他们有的时候会对几个学生们比较好，给他们上什么就给他们什么。然后他说，但是对别的学生们，他们不是那么好。然后他说，你们的老师不能这样做的，因为就是 showing favoritism， 就是你对这个学生是更好的，但是你对这个学生是不好的。但是老师应该在上课不能这样子。然后他说他这样的说话，老师受不了，对他非常生气。所以他现在说他现在有问题，因为这个老师不喜欢他。所以如果他说是真理的，让老师很生气，但是真理是真理。但是如果他说谄媚的话，那个老师可能挺喜欢的。但是如果那个老师做的是不好的，然后他用谄媚的话，可能是那时候帮助他，但是以后不会帮助他。因为如果别的人发现了这个老师做不对或者错误的，那他们也会说，那为什么Olamide，为什么你在跟着他？为什么你在谄媚他嘛？ 所以很多人也会觉得他是不好的学生。但是如果他说是真理的话，那以后只会帮助他，因为他会跟这个人分开。He that rebuketh man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. 人的后来猛然喜悦，都与那用舌头谄媚人的。Why? Because flattery deceives. Flattery is not the truth. Flattery is used strictly to gain someone's favor through deception. 为什么？因为方程是骗人的，方程不是事实，方程别严格的用来骗求别人的好感。It is a false praise. 这是虚假的怎样？ It is done specifically for the purpose of gaining favor and influence, or to accomplish some other ulterior purpose. 是为了什么？虚假的怎样？为了获得常来和影响或达到某种目的而基于的怎样？ And as Christians, we need to learn not to use Latin words. 然后我们记得我们要好好学习，特别是明年，我们要说什么？我们老师要说诚实的，不管别人的感觉，不管别人的喜还是不喜欢你，我们要什么？我们要对真理。我们要对真理 how to say this? We want to concern ourselves with what the Lord says, what God's word says, with the truth. We want to stand by what truth says. We want to stand by God's word, and not stand by what other people say, what other people want to hear, or other people's feelings. 然后我们不想在别人的感觉长起来，或者别人的感情。我们站在哪里？站在神的真理，神的看法。And Paul and the apostles and his workers that were with him were all honest men. 然后保罗还有他的弟兄们都是诚实的人，And flattery might be a benefit for a very short time, but in the end it won't help you. 但是你知道吗？方程可能帮助你，但是只有短时间，不会那么长的时间帮助你。And you know what the thing is when someone starts to flatter you, and they flatter you a lot, sooner or later people will start to realize, why is this person always flattering me? Why is this person always saying something good to me? And you'll start to question. You'll start to say to yourself, why? What does this person want from me? Why is this person always saying good stuff to me? What's their motivation? Because people, especially guys, will think this way. 然后你知道吗？特别是男生，如果一个人每天对你说很多很多好的东西，哇，你是这么帅，这么聪明，这么有钱，你衣服那么好看，以后你会开始什么？你会觉得这个人他想什么？他想要什么？他的到底是什么？为什么他每天对我这样的话？ But you know, when you have people that speak the truth, whether they want to hear it or not, afterwards you realize, like, hey, you become thankful to them because you realize that they're speaking the truth to you whether you want to hear it or not. And you're thankful. Why? Because the truth later on always helps. It might hurt at first, but the truth will always help everyone in the long run. 但是你知道吗？如果有人每天对你只有说真实，有时候这个真实可能伤害你，可能让你感觉不舒服。但是你知道吗？以后真实会帮助你，帮助他，帮助大家。Galatians 1:6-9. 加拉太书第1章6到10节。I marvel that ye are so removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. 我喜气你们这么快离开 那记着基督之恩召你们的，去从别福音。Which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. 那并不是福音，不过有一些人招扰你们，要把基督的福音更改了。But though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which was preached unto you, let him be accursed. 但无论是我们是天上来的使者，若传福音给你们，与我们所传给你们不同，他就应当被咒诅。As we said before, so say now I again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you then that ye have received, let him be accursed. 我们已经说了，现在又说，若有人传福音给你们，与你们所领受不同，他就应当被咒诅。So what's Paul saying here? Paul realizes there's an issue going on in this church. 保罗发现这个教会里面有问题。And there are people in there that are preaching a different gospel, whatever it might be. 在这个教会，有一些人他们在传福音，别的福音。And Paul says, actually, there is only one gospel. 然后保罗说只有一个福音。And then Paul could have said, you know what? They might be a little wrong, but maybe by them preaching this gospel, they're bringing a lot of new people. They're making a lot of money for the church. Let's work with that. That's not what Paul did. 然后保罗也可能说，嘿，我知道他们在传另外一个福音，但是我发现他们在传这个福音的时候，很多人来参加这个教会，赚了更多钱。那我们可以用这个方法只有改一点。他没有说这句话。He says, actually, if anyone's preaching another gospel, let that person be accursed. Even if an angel from heaven itself came down to this church and started preaching a different gospel, let that angel itself be accursed. So Paul is just speaking the truth. He's not concerned about if a person agrees or not, because the truth is always the truth. 然后保罗在这里他说，如果也有天使从天堂过来的，来到这个教会，开始传另外一个福音给你们。他说让这个天使或者这样的牧师咒诅了。因为为什么他这样的话说这句话吗？是因为真理是真理。但是谄媚的话就是谄媚的话。然后他说他不管如果传另外一个福音，然后更多人来参加这个教会，他不管这个问题，他也不管如果别人开始传另外一个福音，那这个教会赚了更多钱，他也不在乎这个问题，他只有在乎真理，只有在乎真理。And so he and the other brothers that were with him were always honest. 所以他跟他的弟兄们老是是诚实的基督徒。And that's something that we should strive to be as Christians as well, especially next year. 然后我们基督徒，我们应该追求这样的美德，就是诚实的美德。The next number 2, self-control. 第二个，自我控制。Christians do not covet things from the heart. 基督徒不会贪心于内心的东西。Verse 5, 第5节 nor a cloak of covetousness, 也没有藏着贪心。So covetousness, 藏着贪心 cloak of covetousness. What is covetousness? Okay, so covetousness, when we think of covetousness, what do you think of? 那你觉得贪心 is covetousness, right?
Yeah.
贪心 when you think of that, what do you think of? 你再自己想一想贪心是什么东西 You might think, well, it's covetousness is I really want to get a new car or a new house, or you start thinking about that a lot, and that takes place in your heart, and that becomes a love or a desire or a lust in your heart. You might say, well, I think covetousness is this. 然后你也可能说，我自己觉得贪心是这样子，我特别想买这个车或者这条房子。 然后我每天就想一想这个房子这个车，或者然后你让这个车这个房子成为你的爱，你可能这样的了解贪心是这个。Covetousness might also be something like you might desire a position at work, and that's all you think about, is all you work for, and that becomes your love. That might be something else. It might be another person. You covet maybe you every night when you go home to your house and you see your neighbor and your neighbor has such a beautiful wife, and like, man, I really wish that was my wife. And you think about it all the time. These things are covetousness. 然后呢，你在上班的时候，你看到别人的工作的位置，你觉得这个人的工作比我好很多，真的很舒服，我真的有感兴趣，赚了更多钱，什么什么什么的。然后以后你让这个成为你的贪心，或者你回家的时候就开始睡觉，看到你的邻居，他有这么漂亮的老婆，然后你超级想要这个老婆是你的老婆，你让她成为你的贪心。And so Paul is saying here, goes, when we came to this church, when we started doing work here, we didn't come here with the intention of making money. We weren't coveting your guys' material. We weren't coveting your building. We weren't coveting your money. We weren't coveting the amount of Christians that were in here, or how we weren't coveting your pastor or whatever. He says, we didn't do this. We came here to help you, and that's it. We didn't come here for ulterior motives. We didn't come here to make a bunch of money or to become really famous and then go to another place. 然后保罗在这里说，我们从来没有到这里是为了贪心你的教会的弟兄姐妹，贪心你的教堂，贪心你的教会的钱，贪心我们在帮助你的时候，贪心你们的钱，为了以后你们给我们更多钱，或者贪心我们的名字什么的。他只来这里还有帮助他们是为了什么？为了让他们的教会发展。And he's saying, he goes, because there are rumors going around. 因为他说我知道有一些人说这句话，有一些人说那句话。Not everyone. We look back on Paul's life, and pretty much every Christian, if they know who Paul is, will agree Paul was an amazing Christian. 然后现在我们都看到保罗的生活，很多基督徒觉得哇，保罗是真的厉害的基督徒，真的厉害的基督徒。But during this time, Paul had a lot of enemies. 你知道吗？那个时代的时候，保罗有很多仇敌。Many people, there were people that were envious of him. There were people spreading rumors about him, saying, Paul does this or does that. Like Paul's only in it for the money, or Paul's only in it for the reputation, or Paul's only in because he wants this in the end. And there's all these rumors going around. And Paul's saying, I didn't covet anything that you guys have. I didn't covet any of your stuff. I didn't covet any of your money. I didn't covet your position of power. Nothing. 然后保罗那时候有很多仇敌。很多人说，你知道为什么他在建立教会？因为他生名字。你知道为什么他在建立教会？因为他生以后在这里可以买房子。你知道为什么他在建立教会？因为他生你们给他很多钱。所以保罗那时候有很多人在说了很多句话来攻击他，然后他有时候必须说，我没有贪心你们的东西，我没有贪心你们的钱，我没有贪心你们的衣服、你们的房子、你们的教堂什么的。And us as Christians, this is something that we also need to strive for, to not have covetous hearts. And I know it's hard. 然后我们基督徒，我们明年，我们都想要什么？不要有贪心的心。我知道有的时候是特别的难过， especially when we see advertisements all the time saying buy this, buy that. You're on Douyin or Pinduoduo or something like that, and there's all these advertisements to buy this and buy that, and it's all every day. It's every single day in our face. 然后我知道在抖音在Pinduoduo有很多广告说买这个买那个买。And us as Christians, we need to learn self-control. 然后我们基督徒，我们特别需要做什么？ 自我控制，自我控制。And I know it's not easy. Sometimes it's very difficult. 我知道有时候是特别的难，不是那么容易。But we need to do it. 就是我们需要自我控制。And also don't let things like worry control you either. 还有我们基督徒也不要让什么担心控制我们。And as Christians, we should have a self-control that's rooted in faith. 然后我们基督徒，我们自我控制应该在哪里？在我们的信仰里，相信上帝，相信耶稣。You know, every Monday, I started this last Monday. 上星期一我开始这个方式。And I asked every single person in the church what are 3 prayer requests. 然后我问所有的我们教会的弟兄姐妹，请你给我3个祷告的请求。And so right now there's 28 people on the list. 现在有28个人在我们的教会的名单，祷告的请求的名单。And each person has 3 prayer requests. 然后每个人有3个祷告请求。And you know, some of the prayer requests on that list are some people have the same prayer requests. 你知道吗？在那个祷告请求的名单，有一些的人的祷告请求是一样的。And one of the things I noticed is that some of the Christians in this church, a lot of them struggle with things like maybe like loneliness or like a type of anxiety or worry. And going into next year, that's something that all of us can learn to improve on. 然后你知道吗？有一些的基督在我们教会里面的基督徒，他们有点担心的地方，或者有一个地方他们有点害怕。然后每年我们都可以学习怎么自我控制我的害怕，自我控制我的担心的地方，或者我的孤单，因为有几个基督徒说我很孤单。And so that is something that these are all areas that we can look to strive to improve upon and ask the Lord for help and ask the Lord for guidance and direction and to not be controlled by these things. And here it was the things to covet after. And so one of the things is if we find things in our heart that we covet after, and sometimes if we can't get that, then sometimes we ourselves get depressed, we get upset, we get worrisome. Because we think we need this when we actually don't. 你知道吗？有时候我们基督徒，如果你有什么东西你特别喜欢，然后这个东西成为你的贪心，如果以后上帝没有给你，或者你没有得到它，以后你会什么？有点担心，因为你觉得你需要这个东西，或者你会有点害怕，因为你觉得我需要这个东西，但是谁没给我？但是他可能没有给你，是因为这个东西成为你的贪心，明白吗？ So us as Christians, we need to learn to have self-control. And that self-control has to be rooted in our faith in Christ. 所以我们基督徒，我们都要好好学习怎么自我控制。我们自我控制应该在我们的信仰里，在耶稣基督里，我们去 self-control。第二个，自我控制。And I know that's not easy all the time. 然后我知道不是那么容易，有时候是挺难的。Number 3， 第三个。Number 3, 良心 consciousness. Christians realize God is always watching 基督徒意识到上帝的重视在注视着。The last clause in verse 5, 第五个最后的从句 God is witness. 这是神可以做见证的。So us as Christians, we should always have an awareness that God is always watching. 然后基督徒，我们需要天天提醒自己，上帝老是可以什么？可以看到你，看到我。上帝总是在注视着。And when we come to this realization that God is always watching, that God always knows, that will also help us to have more self-control. That will also help us to be honest in what we do. 然后如果我们真的知道 上帝总是在注视着，那这个也会给我们什么？自我控制，也会给我们什么？真实的生活。And when we have a conscious awareness that God is always watching, when you're at work, when you're at school, when you're out and about, when you're at home eating dinner or whatever, that God is always watching, that will help to remind us that, hey, don't let your emotions get the best of you. Don't let your heart run to this thing and that thing. Why? Because God knows, God sees, God hears. 然后如果我们真的自己知道，神在看我们，在听我们，他知道，那这个也会帮我们控制自己的心，控制自己的感情，控制自己的说话，我们也不会那么随便没的话，也不那么随便有很大的担心，因为我们知道如果神在看我，他知道了，那这个意思是我们基督徒也知道，这个意思是他与我们同在，这个应该安慰我们，应该帮助我们。God is witness， 这是神可以做见证的。And Paul here is saying that God sees how we are honest. God sees how we didn't covet after your things. 然后这里保罗说什么？这是神可以做见证的，神知道。我们老师说是真实的，没有骗你们，没有骗你们的钱，没有贪心你们的东西，没有贪心你们的教堂。And us as Christians, we could learn a lot from this. Because if us Christians really learned and knew that God was always watching, we wouldn't say some of the things we say, especially about all the Christians. 而如果我们基督徒真的知道上帝老是在听我们，老是在看我们，那我们也不会那么随便 like 批评别的基督徒，或者骂别人，或者贪心别人的东西，因为我们知道，现在上帝在看我，现在耶稣知道，我现在想打这个人，我现在想骂这个人，那这个也会帮我们什么？控制自己，自我控制。And Paul here is saying, God is witness. God knows we didn't come here to make ourselves famous. God knows we didn't come here because we wanted to raise a bunch of support. 保罗这里说，这是神可以做见证的。上帝知道，我们到这里不是为了赚钱，不是为了自己的面子，也不是为了自己的目标。Paul had a strong sense of accountability to God, and this brought balance to Paul's authority and his power when he preached the word. 保罗对神常类的自然感，这是保罗在传道时的权威和权力得到平衡。The accountability came from the contrast realization that the omniscient Lord knew and examined everything in his heart and life. 这一自然来自是不断认识到我所不知的上帝知道，并深知着他内心的生活中的一切。Hebrews 13:17 says, 希伯来书13章17节说 Obey them that have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch over your souls, as they that must give an account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. 你们要一层耐心引导你们的，且要顺服，因他们为你们的灵魂时刻警醒，好像你将来找真的人。你们要使他们找的时候有快乐，不致有愁。若有愁，就与你们无益了。And so this is Paul is saying here is that when Christians, when we realize this, when we realize that God is always watching, when we realize that God always hears, always knows what we're doing, then we won't be quick to attack other people, especially in the church. We won't be quick to disobey whatever authorities are in our lives. 然后如果我们基督徒真的知道上帝那每天看到，每天听到，每天知道，我们也不会那么快批评别的基督徒，也不会那么快我不想顺服我的教会的领导者，或者我不想顺服我的生活的老板，或者我的大学的老师们什么的，因为我们都会知道上帝在看，上帝知道。And that's the idea, that's the mindset that Paul here had. 然后保罗有这样的了解现在 ，and that helped to control parts of his life. 然后这个有点控制他的生活 because he knew God was always watching, because he knew God would always hear, God would always see. That helped to restrain him in a good way. 然后因为保罗知道上帝老是在看他。在听他的话，在做，知道他的做法是什么，也是有时候控制他的生活。但是控制他的生活是真好的，真的很好。And Paul here is saying that, and Paul is saying that just because, and Paul couldn't stay. Him and the two other guys, they couldn't stay in this church for that long period of time. And so now he's writing a letter. 所以保罗跟提摩太还有希拉，他们也不是永远的在这个城市里，所以他在写信给他们 ，and remind them that hey, here to submit to authority。然后在这里说什么？顺服你的交通的教会的领导者。That goes in all areas of life。然后这不是只有在教会里面，是我们的生活全部的地方。And this was always in the mind of Paul。然后就是老师在他的想法里 that God sees, God hears, God knows, the Lord knows. And to go against that would be to dishonor Christ. 然后他知道他的想法老师是上帝听到了，知道了，看到了我的做法，我的说法。然后这个也帮他知道我必须顺服，为了顺服耶稣，为了给他耶稣基督荣耀。And as these Christians, this is something that we can strive for, especially for next year. 然后我们基督徒，我们可以真的想做更好的，或者更努力的基督徒，特别是在良心什么？良心上帝真的能看到我们，真的能听到我们，真的知道我们每天每周在做什么。And if we have a conscious awareness of that, that would also control how we speak truth and helps to control our covetousness. 然后，如果我们有良心，上帝能看到我们，听到我们，也会帮我们每天说实话，不会骗别人，而且也帮我们控制自己的贪心。Let's pray. 我们祷告。Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight's service. 然后主啊，我们很感谢今天晚上的聚会。And Lord, we just pray for just this new year coming up, help us to all grow in these different Christian virtues, Lord, that help us to be stronger Christians, that our lives might shine brighter for you, Christ, that you give us more opportunities to share the gospel. 然后主啊，帮我们都成为明年，帮我们都成为更成熟的基督徒，特别是我们可以让自己的光明发展，光明可以影响更多人，所以主啊，让我们的光明成为更厉害的光，更厉害的灯，为了令到更多人成为基督徒。And Lord, if there's any areas that we have sinned, or we have covetousness, or we have not spoken the truth, or areas that we have neglected to realize that you are always watching, please forgive us. 然后主啊，如果我们有地方有罪的话，或者如果有地方我们没有说是真理的，或者如果有地方我们有点贪心别人的东西或者别的东西，或者如果我们有地方我们没有那么良心，想起来你再看我们，请你赦免我们的罪，帮我们改变。 然后我们都希望明年我们的教会可以成为更程序的，程序的还有圣洁的教会。感谢你，我奉你耶稣基督的名求，阿门。